Welcome back to today's episode of Girl, Calm Down.
So I'm scanning my backyard. I'm just like, Lord, I don't see no animals. Like, that's just odd. Like, I normally would see a couple animals by now. So I'm scanning in my peripheral. I see this figure. I'm just like, this looks weird. So I'm scanning it and I laid eyes on it. So I'm just like, okay, what is this? It looks kind of deformed. It looks weird. So then I looked at it and it turned. And I was able to identify what it was, and it was a butterfly. So I'm looking at it, I'm just like, okay, it's a butterfly. It looks a little odd, looks weird, looks kind of ugly, but you know, it's a butterfly. I've never seen an ugly butterfly, so I'm just like, okay, I'm just observing it because I'm an observer. I could tell you what my animals in my backyard do probably every day. That's how much I observe the animals in my yard. So I'm just looking. And I'm just like, man, this butterfly, it looks weird. So it turns. So at this point, this butterfly is like this. You can't see anything, but it's like this. So it turns. And on this side, it was it was black. It was all black with whites, with little white speck. So I'm just like, okay, not too bad, not too bad. It's okay. So it turns again, y'all. So I'm like, okay. And on the other side, it was orange. It was kind of like a burnt orange. So I'm just like, okay, okay. It don't look too bad, kind of cute. A little weird, but kind of cute. It don't look so bad. All right, y'all. So the butterfly turns again. And at this point, I'm able to see it turns like facing up to me to where I can kind of see its back wings. But at this moment, it didn't show me the outside of it. It only showed me this from this angle. So yeah, I'm looking at this butterfly and I'm just like, okay, this butterfly, it got a little confidence. So I'm just like, look at him. This is a butterfly. And look how, it's behaving at this given moment. So y'all, the butterfly, again, it's turning face me now. Kind of like to the side a little bit, but in front of me enough for it can flap his wings a little bit and show me a little bit of the inside of it. So when I seen that, it gave it like a little soft flutter. And I'm just like, oh, okay. It looks good. Like it's not ugly. So it turns again, y'all. And this time when it turns, it actually opens up its wings and I was able to see the entire butterfly. And y'all, it was the most beautiful butterfly I have ever seen. It had blue on the bottom, it had a burnt orange, a red, and a yellow. And I'm just like, wow, this is different. Like I've never seen a butterfly that had multiple colors for one. And it's beautiful. It turned out to be beautiful. Now, when I first looked at it from the first angle, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is ugly. This look a little weird. But when it began to turn, y'all, I started to see a different side of it. And I'm just like, okay, okay. But when it flapped its wings, y'all, and it showed me how beautiful it was, I was just like, oh Lord, oh Lord. So I'm at this point, I'm just sitting here. I'm sitting here, y'all, and I'm thinking like, Lord, like what are you trying to tell me? Because at this moment, I want you to keep in mind, I was battling some myself. So I'm sitting outside getting a little self-care, have my time with me and God. And I'm just like, okay, you know, Lord, what are you trying to tell me? So then the Lord began to speak to me, y'all. This is a revelation that he gave me, and this is how I was able to apply it to my life and my current circumstances at that moment. It may look ugly right now. Matter of fact, it might be pretty rough looking. You may even ask God, what is this? Just like I looked at the butterfly in my situation at that moment. But as Exodus 14:14 says, the Lord shall fight for you and ye shall hold your peace. So you just keep standing, be courageous, and when the time is right, it will turn around. It will get better. You just keep turning with it. Embrace the journey, look at it from a different angle, and as you keep going, it gets better. You get stronger, and in the end, it's a beautiful thing. Don't let what it looked like discourage you. God will turn it around. And just like me, y'all, I was so stuck on what that butterfly actually looked like. And I even questioned God, like, what is this? It looked deformed. Like, what is this? But instead of looking at it from another angle and realizing how beautiful it could be, you just have to hold on. I just had to pretty much hold on just a little while longer. I would have seen that, okay, yeah, this is a beautiful thing. But I wanted to tell you today, no matter what it looked like, don't let it discourage you, because most time God is either testing our faith or he's preparing us for something. So do believe it gets greater later.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Now, I took a week off. I had to get my rest. I know I said I'll be back next week, but y'all, I'm going through changes too. But welcome back to Girl Calm Down. Let me say my favorite introduction. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Now sit tight and act right. All right, for real. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad that we are here today because we are diving deeper into a positive topic. Now, y'all, last time we talked about embracing change, and we did part one of that. But today we're going to do part two. There may be a part three. There may not be. We're going to see what God says this week, and we'll find out what we talk about next. But today we are focusing on part two of embracing change. Now, I just want to tell y'all first, I'm happy to be back. I actually like talking to y'all. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm talking to myself, but I know y'all going to watch it. But I like talking to y'all. I hope y'all like listening. But again, welcome back to part two of embracing change. We got a lot to cover today, y'all, but I promise you it's going to be worthwhile. So, back to the topic, embracing change. We want to start with this quote. Change pushes growth and reveals hidden strengths. Sometimes God allows things to prevent things. Now, we talked about obedience, what it looks like, transformation, and embracing change, right? Change can feel uncomfortable, uncertain, and even painful at times, but it's often where the deepest growth happens. And today, I want to connect this idea to something that we both see in nature and in scripture, and it's the pruning process. Now, some people might not know what the pruning process is, but I'm about to tell you. The pruning process is the selective removal of plant parts like branches, leaves, buds, or even roots to improve plant health, structure, and appearance, or to increase productivity. Think about gardening. A healthy plant doesn't just grow wild, it needs pruning. The gardener cuts off dead branches, trim back overgrowth, and sometimes remove things that look perfectly fine but are actually keeping the plant from thriving. I want you to think about that for a second. Now, first, it looks harsh, but the purpose of pruning isn't to harm the plant, it's to help it flourish. And that's exactly what change does in our lives. God is the gardener, we are the plant. And when we go through changes, that's typically the pruning process. God is basically removing parts of us that's not of Him, removing people, places, things that no longer serve us any purpose for the plan that He has for us. Yes, the process is hard, and yes, sometimes it can be a little painful, but its intentions are purposeful. That's the most important thing about it. He's removing those things that help us flourish and grow, of course. And again, We talked about that last episode. It will bring grief at times. And this reminds me of the story in 1 Samuel chapter 16. And we're about to get a little deep in that. All right. So Samuel the prophet was mourning King Saul. King Saul had been chosen as king, but he disobeyed God, and his leadership was pretty much over. God said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as the king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." In other words, he told Samuel, "Look, stop holding on to what I've already moved on from. There's something new ahead." And that's pretty much an example of pruning. From our perspective, when we go through changes, we sometimes mourn and try to hold on to the old, even though we know that God has something new for us. I know somebody can relate because I can relate. But first, y'all, we got to let go of the old and move on. Like, it's okay to grieve, for a while, but still, we got to stand on God's words. And at some point, we got to move on. But back to the story. God was cutting away what no longer served his purpose so he could bring growth through David, who one day, y'all, will become king. Now, David didn't know that. And he was just a shepherd. He was just a random shepherd boy. Samuel didn't know that either. God just basically told him, "Hey, look, I know Saul, your boy, but it didn't work out. And I got to make some changes because I got something new ahead." Now, Samuel grieved those changes for a minute. It didn't hurt Samuel, but he still had to go do what God told him to do. So that's how, you kind of got to look at it. But even through those changes, neither one of them knew God's plan. Samuel didn't know who was the next king is, but he was still mourning Saul. David didn't know. He was a shepherd boy. He was just a shepherd. He didn't know that he was about to be the next king. Now, that's the pain of change. But let's be real. Pruning doesn't feel good. Samuel loved Saul. He invested in him, and he grieved those changes God was making. Isn't that what change feels like sometimes? I know it was for me. Let me speak in present. I know it is for me sometimes. So I'm sure somebody out there can relate to things such as like losing a job, ending a relationship, or moving on into a new season of life. Now, it can feel like a loss. We want to hold on to what's comfortable, even if it's no longer fruitful. Mm. Did y'all catch that last part? We want to hold on to what's comfortable, even if it's no longer fruitful. So, what purpose is that old serving? Nothing. It's not fruitful. So, that's the hard part about it. We have to come to realization of it. But there is a purpose of the pruning process. But here's the thing, y'all. Pruning isn't punishment. We got to get out our mindset that the pruning process is punishment. It's preparation. Just like a gardener envisions a healthy, flourishing plant, God sees a bigger picture in our lives. Pruning makes room for new opportunities. It removes what drains us so we can grow stronger. It also shapes us for the future God has already prepared. Ding, ding, ding. Even if we don't even know what the future is. Saul's chapter had to close so David's chapter could begin. And sometimes a door has to close in your life so the right one can open. Now, let me testify real quick. Let me tell you a little story about me. So, y'all know I'm still basically in that embracing the change stage of my life. I told y'all about that part On the first episode, I told y'all that I'm still in that embracing change stage in my life. I'm still working on it. Like embracing change, it comes with a lot. I'll be honest, it comes with a lot. Um, a lot evolved within that process. And now that I think about it, it built up to this very moment of my life. Like even today, it built up to this very moment in my life. Now, those moments are always very uncomfortable for me, but I had to grow through those changes and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, I got some clarity the other day, and that clarity came pretty much from obedience. And that obedience, I was in isolation, and during that isolation, I did what I was supposed to do. I did what I was supposed to do. But then there came the waiting period. And in that waiting period, it doesn't look typically, it doesn't look or feel like the way we expect it to. And during that time, you know how it is when you get tired of waiting. We tend to make irrational decisions, rush the process. We become unaligned with God or his plans. And it's like you taking a pen from the author and trying to write your own story when the story is already written. I'm laughing at myself, honestly, y'all. I'm laughing at myself. But this brings me back to the point, embracing change. But it made me realize too how sometimes God gets quiet when he's testing you. You know that saying when they like when you're going through something hard or wonder where God is, remember the teacher is always quiet during the test. But that's what I just experienced. But I'm gonna tell you this. I got quiet too. I got quiet too. And that was mama where I cried out, surrender, worship, praise, prayed, and even complained. But the lessons was in the waiting aspect of it. Getting comfortable with change and also waiting on God at the same time. Because remember, he has something new ahead of us. And when I was writing this, it reminded me of my favorite song, which so happened to talk about First Samuel chapter 16 too. And this song is called We Wait for You by William Murphy. And when he first started this song, y'all, he says, sometimes we worship and we forget to give God time to respond. And he goes deeper into um First Samuel chapter 16. He pretty much talk about how at this point, he said, I'm gonna say it word for word. He said David basically found out that Saul was tripping, and he called for Saul called David to come play the minister to him with his instrument. So we're gonna get a little deeper into that now. This is my story, and this is what it reminded me of. But in that story, in the beginning, because of Saul's disobedience, the spirit of the Lord departed from him, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. I was like, so you're not gonna be obedient? I got something for you. But remember, I said that sometimes God allows things to prevent things. Well, that's basically what happened with Saul, which led to David becoming king, right? David was anointed. We got to remember that David was anointed. And he played his string instrument to bring calmness and comfort to Saul. Now, Saul was dealing with the evil spirit of the Lord. That sent him basically into distress. He was in distress, and it made it harder on him. And again, he had already lost his position as king, so he was taking them consequences pretty hard. But God allowed that spirit though. He allowed that spirit. The evil spirit from the Lord caused Saul to pretty much be agitated and fearful. Saul pretty much going crazy, to sum it all up. Saul basically was out of alignment with God. because of his disobedience. But David was used to relieve him of that spirit. David's gift relieved him of that spirit. That's crazy. But stay with me now. Stay with me now. Let me put a real life perspective on it. Now, I asked God, I'm going to tell you what I asked God. I asked him in prayer to increase my mental capacity so I can handle all the blessings that he's coming my way. Because at this point in my life, I can't afford to fumble no bag. Everything that's coming my way, Lord, I need you to give me the mental capacity to be able to handle, to be able to multiply these blessings. So that's what I prayed for. And he did. He did exactly what I asked for. He increased my mental capacity, but it wasn't in a way that I expected it to be. I was in it though. So, you know how when you're in it, you don't see it, you can't see it at the moment. So I didn't realize what was happening at the time. I'm just going crazy. Like I got this, that, and the third to do. I'm doing this. I'm handling multiple tasks at multiple times now. Y'all, I've been a business owner for about at least 5 years now. And I think when I asked God that, I've managed a lot of trucks. I've created a lot of things. I've done a lot. I've worn a lot of hats. But when I prayed that prayer, it's like God was like, okay, I'm gonna give it to you. But at that time, I really, again, I didn't realize what was going on. So I had so much going on at one time, but I had to be able to manage it all at one time. Again, I prayed for God to increase my mental capacity, but I didn't expect it to come the way that it did. I don't know if I thought that I was the Marvel character, the one with the big head, the blue guy. Look, look. I don't know if I thought it was him. Oh, his name is Mega Brain. I don't know if I thought it was going to be something like that. I guess that's what I envisioned or whatever, but I thought it was going to be something like that. I didn't think it was going to be the way that he gave it to me. I was handling multiple things, preparing for events, school, school projects, visiting family. I mean, I had a whole lot going on, more than I can name right now. But I kept going until one day I decided to sit down and look back. One day, I guess I just got tired. I sat and thought about it. I always say just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. And I got to continue to remind myself. But I decided to look back one day. I decided to look back, and that made me even more tired because I looked at how far I've come, all the work that I had been doing, and all the work I still have to do. And that made me even more tired. I decided to pick up the pen and make a move when God had already told me not to. I decided to handle it on my own pretty much. I was about to make a decision that basically didn't align with his plan. But before I made that decision, I went to God first and I waited. And I was like, I'm going to give it to this day and then I'm going to make that move. That day came. I was so busy. I didn't even get a chance to, make that move. Next day came. So I said, I'm going to give it to this day. That day came. I still had multiple things going. So I didn't have time to even just, again, make that move. So that next day came. I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing it today. I'm making that move today. And now at the same time, he was already increasing my mental capacity, but I didn't realize that at the moment. I didn't realize the wisdom and knowledge that I had asked for was actually happening to me at the moment. And I was getting ready to make that move. But right when I was getting ready to make that move because I had waited so long, God had pretty much again made it impossible for me to make that move. With at the time he was increasing my mental capacity, so I didn't have time to be like go set that what I was gonna set up or go take that chance that was presented to me. And it was nice. It was something familiar. It was something I know I was, would be good at. It was a great opportunity for me. And right when I was about to double back on that decision, God came through. He said, "Hold on, I got you." He said, "Hold on, I got you." But the thing about it that I love that I went to God first. Now I might grew tired during the process, or I got tired of waiting. I'm not gonna lie, but I went to God first and I waited. The wait was the test of long endurance, and it's proved something to me, and it proved something to God. To be honest, so He caught me right at my breaking point. He knew I was enduring and I was tired, so I guess I passed. I guess I passed the test. But something that I did learn and wait is, sometimes long endure can change the way you wait. Like in episode 1, I told you that you have to be able to suffer sometimes. We gotta be able to suffer like Jesus sometimes. But you have to constantly change the way you wait because change is constant. You basically pretty much learning a different way to wait each time. Every time, pretty much. Especially when you're being tested. But when you're going through those changes or that test, learning a different way to wait creates change. And that change takes some time to get used to. Now, I told y'all I'm still embracing change. And when I told y'all that God told me I was going to have to reintroduce myself, it was not just y'all. I had to reintroduce myself to me too. And I'm still reintroducing myself to me. Now, I know who I am. Don't get me wrong, I know who I am. It takes some time to get used to being that new person, that new you, those new changes. Still going through the process of embracing those new changes. And I literally have to constantly remind myself that, okay, Kia, this is the old you, this is the new you. I have to constantly reintroduce the new me to the old me. And that's pretty much like the pruning process. The things that God had removed from me, getting used to that while at the same time being tested. Sometimes we don't realize that during the transformation process that the table is already being set as we change. We have to continue to get wisdom and knowledge to be able to handle that. So when God tells us to take a seat at the table, He has prepared. We sit and we sit gracefully. Like Samuel, I was still mourning the opportunity that God didn't allow me to take. Grieving an opportunity that felt familiar when He had already told me to move on. I have something new ahead. You know what? Let the hear it here. Look, change feels hard because of fear of the unknown, the feeling of being uncomfortable, and the loss of control. But put the pen down. We are not the author, and there are parts of these journeys that we have no control of. And yes, that's scary, but God is pruning us so we can grow and flourish. The question is, how will we respond? We can stay stuck mourning our souls, the things that God has already moved us past, or we can trust Him and step into our Davids, the new beginnings He's preparing. Samuel had to move forward and anoint David, even though he didn't see the whole story yet. In the same way, we may not understand every change while it's happening, but we can trust that God is pruning us for the purpose. Now, I'm gonna leave you with this, and here's a couple takeaways for the day. Pruning is preparation. Change is growth in disguise. When something ends, when God closes a door, it may just be because He's making room for something greater. I want to leave you with a reflection question. What Saul are you still mourning that God has already moved on from? And what new David might God be preparing in your life? Thank y'all for tuning in today. If this episode encouraged you, share it with a friend who might be going through change. And remember, Don't resist the pruning process, y'all. Embrace it. Embrace change because it's making room for your next season of growth. Until next time, keep growing, keep trusting, and keep embracing change. And you already know what I'm about to say. And girl, calm down.